Hello everyone and welcome back to the CDL Podcast channel. In this episode today, obviously, we are going to be going over the whole weekend. A lot of matches to go through and stuff. It was a pretty busy weekend with a bunch of regular season matches. A pretty important weekend for a lot of teams to get their season started off right and get their seeding started off right for that first major. But before we really get into breaking down what I saw, I just want to thank you all for 200 subs. We just crossed the 200 sub mark. I started this channel and this podcast in hopes of gaining maybe a few subs and having kind of a little small community to talk the CDL with, and it's turned into much more than I could imagine, and much more than I could have hoped for. I know 200 subs is some crazy number, but it's a pretty good sized community. I was able to start a fantasy league with some of you guys. I talked to some of you on Twitter, have like group chats with people and stuff, and it's just fun to be able to have a community to kind of talk CDL with a bunch of other people that are really passionate about it. So yeah, thanks again, guys. It really makes me so happy to see the growth this channel has had, and let's keep pushing for more. So with that said, if you're still new here, be sure to subscribe if you enjoy the content. I post a lot of CDL podcast content and stuff like that, just breaking down the CDL, doing predictions and stuff, roster mania kind of stuff. I don't have any inside information or anything. I just more react to kind of roster changes and stuff like that. But like this video if you enjoy as well, and then drop a comment on your thoughts. That's my favorite thing to do, is kind of read through the comments and see what you guys think about the matches, because I mean, obviously I'm not some be all end all on CDL knowledge. I don't know everything about the matches. You guys might see something in a match that I didn't notice, and you can offer that insight down below. It's going to make me a better fan. It'll make other people a better fan. It's just kind of fun to have that back and forth going. As well as this weekend, I was able to watch most matches, but I mean, with matches being Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all throughout the day, I'm obviously not always going to be able to catch every single match, so there might be some matches I don't have as much knowledge on, that you guys can maybe provide some insight in the comments on. So yeah, without further ado, I think I'm just going to hop right into the matches. We'll probably go in order in which they happened, kind of like the Thursday matches, Friday matches, Saturday, and then Sunday, and just kind of go over some of my thoughts on them pretty quickly for each match. So that first match to kick off the league was LA Thieves versus Minnesota Rocker. Kind of an interesting one, not the way I expected it to go. I did predict Minnesota to win this one just because based on what we saw in the Kickoff Classic, LA Thieves kind of looked like OGLA from last year, a team full of talent that just hadn't figured it out yet, so I kind of thought that's where they'd keep going, and I was wrong about that. That first hard point on Garrison went the way of LA Thieves by about 50 points. There wasn't really like a super standout player. I mean, Kenny played well, Slasher played well. I mean, nobody really played awful on their team. Minnesota just kind of got outslayed, and LA Thieves was able to take it by 50 points. The Search and Destroy on Miami, I did notice Minnesota played so slow, and then they got up to like, I think it was like a 4-0 lead. They got a pretty big lead right away, and then once LA Thieves realized how slow Minnesota was playing on that Miami, they just kind of sped it up and kind of rushed, got in their face, and started taking a bunch of rounds, but they dug themselves too much of a hole. So they lost that one, and the control went the way of LA Thieves pretty dominantly 3-1, and then they destroyed them on that last Moscow hardpoint. Remember, it was like 250 to 60 or something like that. They absolutely destroyed them. So overall, I mean, honestly, the first hardpoint they won by a decent amount. Control, they kind of dominated. The last hardpoint they dominated, and honestly, the Search and Destroy, if they wouldn't have dug themselves such a big hole, they probably would have won that. It probably wouldn't have even needed that last hardpoint. It would have been a 3-0. So pretty impressive from LA Thieves, because as we saw later in the weekend, Minnesota is no slouch of a team. They were able to take down Empire later on. So at the time, this matchup seemed like, wow, nice to see LA Thieves get a win and impress me, but it seems even more impressive now that we were able to see Minnesota take down Dallas in the fashion that they did, being that a lot of people said Dallas was the best team in the league coming into this weekend. But yeah, it was an impressive win from LA Thieves. Not a whole lot to say other than it's the first match, because like, once again, I'm not going to overreact. That's a big thing. It's kind of in my like later hot takes type section, just like commentary section I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to overreact to anything. I was impressed with LA Thieves. I was a little disappointed in Minnesota, but they redeemed themselves later on. Then in that second match on Thursday, I believe it was the last match. It was Dallas Empire, Seattle Surge. I mean, a pretty expected result here. Dallas 3-0'd them. It was, I mean, let's be honest, it wasn't close. They 100-point clubbed him in the hard point, beat him 6-2 in the Search, and then 3-1 in the Control. We could maybe chalk this up to the whole Gunless weird thing on Twitter. I mean, like, Gunless had like a 0.6 in the hard point, like a 0.5 in the Search, and then he went like even in the Control. But if you saw, I think he was playing on like 60 hertz or something for this match, while everybody else is on like 240, and then he must have figured out in between matches and got it figured out for his match against London. And I believe that was Sunday. But once again, I mean, we knew coming into this Dallas is maybe the best team in the world, and Seattle was what we thought, maybe towards the bottom of the league, probably bottom 4. So I'd expect nothing less than a 3-0. The only thing I would say is I was hoping, I mean, Surge with Octane, Gunless, Pristini, I mean, that's not like awful talent. I wouldn't say they're one of the most talented teams in the league, but like they're certainly not one of the least talented. Like they have some talent on the roster, so I would expect them in the respawns to keep up a little more, not get 100-point clubbed. But they did play Crossroads. Crossroads is a smaller map where subs can kind of dominate. And when you've got Hook, Illy, and Shotzi able to run a sub, and you've got Pristini and Looney on the other side, and Gunless isn't the best with a sub. I mean, I guess it makes sense that they dominate such a small map like Crossroads. But, I mean, there's not a lot to talk about with this match. It was kind of just an absolute clubbing from Dallas Empire and Seattle Surge. But another team that kind of got beat down on day 1 but redeemed themselves later on. That's one of the more exciting matches we'll probably go in depth in a little more. Because these early matches kind of sucked. As I moved on to the next match here, it was OpTic versus Paris. And this wasn't a great one either. OpTic absolutely destroyed them, almost 100-point, clubbed them in the raid hardpoint. A little bit closer of a search. It was 6-4. And then that last raid control was actually really close. I thought Paris was actually going to win that map. They probably should have won that map. But OpTic was able to clutch it out. The hardpoint, there's not much to talk about. They just absolutely dominated them on rotations, outslayed them. That was the big thing to me is like Paris was able to hit scrap a lot on that raid hardpoint, but OpTic was just destroying them on the rotations. I mean, they'd get there early, rotate, hold it, and then the few times they didn't, I remember like there was one garage hill where Paris had the early setup. It was like, okay, here's where Paris can swing the game. They can maybe get a full 60 on garage, and then within like 10 seconds, OpTic had fully broken, flipped to spawns, and had control. Like Paris, their gun skill just wasn't there. I think there were some jitters from Fire. He went 12 and 19 in that first map. He just didn't seem to be all there. I mean, and that's understandable. I mean, I can imagine if it was a lot of people really didn't think he deserved that spot in the league. A lot of people thought they were doing it because Paris was offering minimum contracts, and he was kind of the guy to take one. He was willing to get into, I mean, screw it. If I was him, I would 100% taken a minimum contract to get my name out there and get in the league and possibly showcase what I can do. But a lot of people didn't believe in him, and I mean, what other way to start out your... I mean, imagine if this was a LAN match with the crowd behind OpTic. I'd be pretty nervous. I'm playing Scump and Formal, 2 legends of the scene. Like, I mean, you're playing OpTic, the biggest brand in COD history, and you're coming in your first match. You're a big underdog. He's probably pretty nervous. So kind of give him a pass on that. But honestly, Paris impressed me, and I thought they were going to beat LAG because of this match. The way that they played the search really tight, it seemed like they were a good search team. But I mean, maybe them losing search to OpTic shows they're a bad search team based on what we saw OpTic do later on. Like I said, I don't have as much concrete like info off this because it's 1 week. Like we saw some of these teams play 2 maps of search and destroy, 2 maps of hardpoint, 2 maps of control. Like that's not enough of a sample size. We kind of need to go through this whole stage 1 before we get a really good grasp of where everybody is. We can kind of place them in the area of the league if they're top, middle, or bottom, but like it's kind of hard to exactly tell like, oh my god, OpTic lost to Faze, they're going to be horrible at search all year. Like that's just not the case. But Paris was overall kind of impressive in this match. The fact that they were able to make the search competitive and the control very competitive. And there was a path for them to win this series. If they were able to clutch out that search and make it a 1-1 game, they almost won that control. They could have been up 2-1. Now, granted, I'm fairly confident OpTic would have taken a hard point and forced a game 5. But Paris is going to have to be a team that wins maps 2, 3, and 5 all year. They're going to have to be a team that's going to be really, really, really good at search. They're going to have to be a top 3 search team if they want to make any kind of noise. And they're going to have to probably be like a top 5 control team if they want to make any noise. Because honestly, talent-wise, they're probably not going to be able to keep up with teams in the sling and hardpoint, which is going to cost them. So they're going to have to be a really good 2-3-5 team, kind of like that Elevate team in BO3 that I always refer back to. And then in the next match here on Friday, it was LAG versus Atlanta Faze once again to continue the trend. Kind of a crappy match. Faze kind of beats them down. They dominated that Crossroads hardpoint in map 1. Then they won the search on Garrison 6-4 and the control 3-1. Once again, not a whole lot to talk about here. It was, like I said, I talked about it a little bit on Twitter. People were complaining about 3-0s, but I mean, to kick off the first few days, it was like the top 3 teams in Empire, Faze, and OpTic playing against the bottom 3 teams in Gorillas, Surge, and Paris. So like 3-0s were kind of expected, but this is honestly a plus sign for Faze in my opinion, because if you remember with Faze's team last year, obviously there's a little bit of a turnover. Priestad, Major Maniac are gone. Arcitys is in. But if there's one thing I remember about Faze last year in Modern Warfare is they let bad teams stick around. And that's obviously in anything. In sports, it's not a good thing when you play down to your competition. But Faze seemed to do that a lot last year. When they'd play bad teams, they would just like let them hang around. They would let it go to a game 5, and then they'd clutch up and they'd win most of those game 5s, or they'd win it 3-1, but all the maps would be close and stuff. But Faze is a team, I mean, when you've got this much talent and you're playing a team like LAG, let's be honest, LAG might be a good team, but like talent, gun skill wise, they're probably towards the bottom of the league in that. So a team like Faze should be absolutely dominating them, at least in the slaying department. And they did that here, which is good to see. On the part of LAG, all you see is you just got to get better at teamwork, because let's be honest, you're not going to be able to outslay Faze, so your teamwork just has to be impeccable, and it wasn't here. They made a lot of little mistakes. You heard the casters talking about that. But in this matchup, it was kind of what I expected. Like I said, good for Faze, though. Honestly, that's the one thing I take away from this matchup. LAG, it was your first match of the year. You played Faze. It's a tough first match to draw. You're probably going to lose that 9 out of 10 times. So not much to worry about there for them. They'll get it figured out, and hopefully as they kind of get their teamwork more figured out, maybe they'll be able to take a chance and take a crack and upset a Faze every once in a while. But for Faze, a positive to take away is you played a bad team who you used to always let in games last year, and you dominated them. So that's good to see for Faze if you're a Faze fan. Then the next matchup, to start off the day on Saturday, it was LAG coming back-to-back playing Paris. I remember my predictions. I predicted Paris 3-2 here because honestly, looking at the rosters, I feel like Paris has a higher ceiling, but LAG came out and impressed me. They won that first hardpoint on Crossroads by about 50 points. Silly played extremely well. Apathy played extremely well. Apathy took over this map. That was when he went on that like 10 streak, kind of roaming around middle map and stuff. If this team is going to have any chance at beating top teams, Apathy's got to be like a top player. When you look at their team, Assault's going to be like a mainstay AR, but he plays so slow, he's probably not going to like take over games. And Silly, he's a weird player because he seems so average, but then at times he can just take over. So honestly, if this team is going to be a top team, they need Vivid to kind of be like a superstar entry player. They need Apathy to get back to like that BO3 form, and they just need Silly to be a really solid flex, because Assault's probably going to be like a consistent 1 on the AR. But this matchup was impressive to me. They were able to take that first map, Crossroads, by 50. They dominated the Miami Search 6-2, so maybe Paris isn't as good at Search as I thought they would be, because they lost that Search versus OpTic 6-4, and they lost both Searches in this series. But once again, the one thing I will say about Paris, they showed some resilience in this series. LAG was able to get up 2-0 with Apathy dominating the map 1, and then they dominated Miami Search. But then Paris took that checkmate, control 3-1, which is pretty impressive that they took an offense, because offense on checkmate is extremely hard to win, even in league play sometimes. If you're playing a team that's pretty even to you, it's hard to win. And then they took that Garrison hardpoint, 250 to 198. I believe Aqua took over. Yeah, Aqua and then Fire also played really well on that map. LAG just overall got outslayed, and that's what I was talking about. I'm looking at the stats here, and Apathy went 17 and 29 in that game 4 hardpoint on Garrison. Like I said, it's like when Apathy doesn't play well, they're going to get destroyed, because he's kind of the guy that I look at. I know people are probably looking at Vivid to be the superstar, but we've never really seen Vivid do that in his career. He's never really been like that insane superstar player, and Apathy has. So it's like, I mean, Vivid is probably the guy they're looking at to be their superstar, since he's like the young gun, but to me, it's got to be Apathy, because he's proven he can do it. And then that Game 5 Search, Vivid did what he's supposed to do. This is where he should be the shining star of the team. He went 9-7, had a really good map. Silly had a really good map, and Paris just got beat 6-4 on Raid. That was once again another one where I think LAG had like a 5-3 lead, lost a round to make it 5-4, and then Fire kind of over-challenged, I believe, in that last round from Money. And he got gunned, just didn't wait long enough, and then LAG wins it. Excuse me. But yeah, LAG is able to win this one 3-2. I was a little surprised. I kind of thought, based on these two teams, Paris has the higher ceiling. I still think that way in a way. Like I said, I don't want to overreact to anything and say like LAG is instantly better than Paris because they beat them 3-2 in the first week one time. But I'll say I'm concerned about Paris' Search and Destroy. They went 0-3 in Search. I think LAG is probably a pretty good search team, but OpTic, from what we saw, might not be a great search team, and they lost to them. I'll still say I think Paris has a higher skill ceiling, because to me, Fire has a higher ceiling than Vivid. I think Vivid's more consistent and probably the better player right now, but I think Fire has maybe a higher ceiling and respawns. I think Scraps and the Flex, if he plays that, they jumbled around their Flex between Fire Classic and Scraps all weekend, but I think if Scraps plays the Flex, he has a higher ceiling than Silly. Maybe not as consistent, but higher ceiling. And then if you compare like Apathy to Classic, I think Apathy has a higher ceiling there, so LAG kind of balances it out. But I'll say that just overall, I feel like Paris has more upset potential in respawns, but I just think that the experience of LAG won out here. So as of right now, LAG is the better team. They're probably going to be consistently better. Like, I think LAG will consistently compete in series more, but I think randomly on the right weekend, if Paris gets hot, they might be able to upset better teams, if that makes sense. Like I said, it's so early on. We don't really know exactly what's going to go on with these teams because it's just a crapshoot at this point with trying to predict what's happening so early on. But like I said, I was surprised by this one. To me, it's not going to matter all that much because I still think they're both going to be towards the bottom, but it was nice to see LAG scratch out a win here. And then our next matchup was Toronto, Florida. This one kind of caught me off guard, I'll be honest. Like I said, I predicted Florida to win this one, I believe 3-2. I thought it was going to be a really close match. So I was right on that front in the fact that I thought Toronto could compete, but I didn't think they would kind of dominate the match like they did. The thing that caught me off guard here was Sky. Sky's played pretty bad in this match overall. I mean, like, yeah, map 1, he had a .68. Then in the search, he had a .5. Control, he had a .8. And then that last hard point, he had a .6. Sky's was really bad overall. I don't think that'll continue, though. I think, like, once again, if you're Florida, you don't have to hit the panic button. But if you're Toronto, I would start to get a little excited. I think you've got a team on your hands here. And that map 1, honestly, Methods was just kind of coasting while Bance, and then especially Cammy and Kleenex kind of took over. And then the search, Methods kind of took over. The control they lost, but it was a 3-2. It was close. Awakening played out of his mind in that control. And then also Slack kind of played out of his mind. I remember when they were on that point on like the green satellite, he started to take over the map and went on like a 6-7 streak to win the game. And then in that final Crossroads hardpoint, Toronto was able to kind of take over. Neptune had a really good map, but the rest of his team did not, and everybody on Toronto just played solid around like a 1.1. But if there was a way I expected Toronto to win this series, it would have probably been through like maybe taking one hardpoint or the control and then both searches. But they didn't even have to take both searches because the game was over in map 4. They took both hardpoints and the search. They just lost the control 3-2. So to me, that's really impressive because when I look at a team like Florida with Sky's Neptune Awakening, I feel like they're going to be able to outslay a lot of teams because that's just a lot of talent. And it's not like Slack is some slouch either. He's going to be able to drop around a .1 every time. He's still a skilled player. It's not like he's not, but he's just not at that level of Neptune Awakening Skies in terms of slaying. But Toronto was able to take both hardpoints, and I mean, they won at 250 to 164 on Garrison and 250 to 177 on Crossroads. So, like, a pretty dominating performance overall. They were able to win by like 90 points, about 80 points on each. So I was pretty impressed by that, to be honest. They won the search, which I would expect. I'm expecting Toronto to be a really good search team all year. And like I said, don't want to overreact, don't want to overrate Toronto. But to me, they showed strength in what I thought was going to be their weakness, if that makes sense. They won both hardpoints against what I would expect to be a top 4 hardpoint team. And then they were able to win a search like I would expect. So honestly, if I'm Toronto, I'm excited because your team showed a lot of potential. If I'm Florida, once again, I wouldn't hit the panic button. This was Neptune's first official match. Slack looked pretty good in some of the maps. Awakening looked very good in the search and the control. And then Sky struggled. But honestly, if there's one person, like if Neptune would have struggled, I would have been concerned because it was his first match. If Awakening even would have struggled, I would have been concerned because we've only seen him be good in one title. If Slack struggled, I'm not that concerned because it's Slack. I know he'll pick it up. We've seen him pick it up before. But Sky struggling, honestly, doesn't concern me at all because he was an MVP candidate last year. He was very good in Black Ops 4. He was very good in Modern Warfare. I mean, I would expect him to pick it up, I think. I mean, people are allowed to have an off match. Maybe he just had an off match. But yeah, I think this was an interesting one. Next match, we had LA Thieves versus New York Subliners. Not much to talk about here. Once again, it was a 3-0, but it was a very close 3-0. This is the one match, too. Like I said, I might not be able to watch every match. I was busy during this match. I saw the map 1 before it got replayed when it was like 100-0 Subliners. And there was like an issue with Slasher's game or something. It crashed, something like that. But like I said, there's no overreaction to be had here. It doesn't say, oh my God, LA Thieves 3-0 New York. They're a dominant team. And there's no like panic for New York. They lost the hardpoint on Moscow 250 to 241. They lost the Miami search 6-5, and then they lost the raid control 3-2. So, I mean, not much concern to have here. When you look through the New York stats as well, I mean, Clay played well, Asim played really well on that map 1, and then the search, Diamond Khan played extremely well, and Clay played well, and then the last hard point, pretty much everybody played well but Mac. The only concern I have here is maybe inconsistency. Once again, Mac didn't play well overall in the series, and it's not like Mac's some guaranteed player. We only saw him last year, and he was very, very good. But he had 3 pretty awful maps, honestly. He had a 0.7, a 0.5, and a 0.5 in the 3 maps. That's the only concern I have with him here. Kenny kind of took over the series for the LA Thieves. He played really well. TJ also played really well in that last control, but like, don't overreact on either side here. We've got LA Thieves 3-0 somebody, so it looks good on paper, but I mean, they could have been 3-0. They won by 9 points in the hard point and then won in the control and search. And if you're in New York, honestly, this is a super positive. If LA Thieves is as good as everybody says they are, and they're the top team like some people are saying they are, and you could have 3-0'd them, it just came down to like 1 round or a couple points in every match, you should feel pretty confident, especially considering your team's pretty new. Diamond kind of impressed me, though, overall. Good player. Then the next match was Seattle Surge versus London. This was a fun match to watch. I picked Surge to win at 3-2 just because I thought with Ravens being kind of a newer team, they would struggle. They came out in that map 1 hardpoint, and Parasite was really struggling early on, and he picked it up. But, I mean, this was just a vintage gunless performance. He hit the 244 hertz, and he took off. He was vintage gunless. He went 40 and 26, dominated the map. London had kind of a late surge in the map, but it was just too late because Parasite started the map so slow, and they just kind of dug themselves a hole. Then the checkmate was 6-5. They were able to clutch up. Seattle clutches up once again. A gunless takeover on checkmate. He went 12 and 6. Octane went 10 and 5. That's kind of the duo that I would expect. If this team's going to go anywhere, it's going to be an Octane and gunless duo, which scares me a little bit once again because what do both those players use? I mean, Octane's going to have an AR in his hands 24/7, and with the way the meta is right now, gunless is probably going to have an AR in pretty much every map. So when your 2 takeover players are both your ARs, it's a little concerning. And then after getting up 2-0, they dropped the Garrison control pretty handily, honestly. They kind of got dominated on that one, everybody but Octane. And then in the hard point on checkmate, once again, they got, pretty thoroughly dominated. Dylan kind of took over that map. This is the map, I believe, that I tweeted, and there was flashbacks of Black Ops 4 Dylan. Some of the things he was doing, just fast twitch movements, flying around the map, picking up kills, picking up 2 pieces, picking up 3 pieces. He looked like Black Ops 4 Dylan, and once again, Royal Ravens fans, that's huge for you to see because you're missing Zero, who could potentially be your best player, and you have a fill-in. You're only able to practice with him for like 2 weeks or less. Obviously, Seattle Surge aren't some amazing team. It's not some feat to compete with them, really. But the fact that they were able to go to a Game 5 with pretty much a new team, and you saw flashes of Black Ops 4 Dylan. You also saw flashes of Alex looking really good. And if this team is going to compete and be a good team, we're going to need Black Ops 4 Dylan, and we're going to need kind of like a World War II Alex. So I would say there's a lot of positives to take from London side. And then also from Seattle side, they won both searches in this. They won that last search 6-2 on Raid, despite a little bit of a flashback from Black Ops 2 Parasite. He had an ace, kind of chilling around Laundry. He picked up a couple kills and had an ace. Dylan played really bad in that map 5. He went 1 and 8, but it's whatever. Dylan looked overall good in the series. But like I said, London fans, once again, I've said it a million times in this podcast, don't panic. You've got a new player in your lineup. You took them to a Game 5. Seattle fans, though, don't get too excited, but you were able to win 2 searches, and Gunless looked like he could potentially be a superstar again, so that's a super positive takeaway from this match. Then getting into the last 2 matches of the weekend, Minnesota takes out Dallas 3-2. That first map, Dallas wins the hard point, and then Minnesota takes the search. Kind of how I would expect it to go, to be honest. I would expect Dallas to win that. That was when they had that issue, the connection issue, and Dallas was up like 140 to like 2. And I was like, there's no way, there's got to be a connection issue. Thank God they replayed it. They were a lot better about replays this weekend than they were last year. Last year, they like refused to do any replays, but it was nice to see them do a replay because clearly Minnesota couldn't really move around in that map at all. They were lagging, and they said they were getting connection interrupted like every few seconds. And that's like the worst way to lose. I hate watching a team lose because their connection's bad. That's the reality of an online league, is sometimes you're going to have it. But if we can have a replay, it's nice to have a replay because clearly, Minnesota was competitive in that map. They only lost it by 49 points. It was 250 to 201. But that's how I would expect this series to go. Minnesota, I expect to be a top search team. They win the search on Moscow 6-3. Then the control goes the way of Minnesota 3-2. And then that last hard point, once again, about 250 to 200, goes in favor of Dallas. So this series honestly kind of went how I would expect it. If it was going to go a Game 5, I would expect Dallas takes both hard points. Minnesota takes the search and the control. And then that final search map, Minnesota kind of dominated. I think they won it like 6-2 on Garrison or something like that. So overall, an impressive series from Minnesota. one takeaway I have from this, Attach is the freaking best 1v1 player in the world in Search. Every time that dude gets in a 1v1, I swear he's going to win it. But then a takeaway for Dallas, you got to improve a little bit if you're going to be the top team, because Hook really took over in this series and he looked amazing. But honestly, the rest of the team, Shotzzy came kind of back down to earth. He had a really good map 1 and he still played pretty good overall. But he looked human. He was getting gunned a little bit. And then Hook kind of dominated. Let's be honest. Hook played really well in both respawns, especially. Krim looked okay, but this is one of my concerns with this team is Krim didn't play amazing, and I'm not doubting Krim. Krim's a 3-time world champ for a reason. He's the GOAT for a reason. He's won the most chips for a reason. But that's one of my doubts about this team is every time I've seen Krim on the main AR, I haven't been that impressed. I feel like Krim is the perfect flex, and like I said, I don't want to overreact to anything this weekend. I think if you're Minnesota, you get hyped that you're able to take this, but you still got some work to do. You lost both hard points to LA Thieves, and you lost both hard points to Dallas. You went 0-4 in hard points, so you've definitely got some work to do, but your search is strong and your control is strong. So that's something to take as a positive going forward, but you've got to work on your hard point. And if you're Dallas, I'd be the slightest bit concerned that maybe Krim against other mains might struggle, because in that map 1, he got outslayed by accuracy by 12 kills. And even in that map 4, he outslayed accuracy by 5 kills, but accuracy really struggled on the map. Overall, I would just say I'd be slightly the slightest because once again, Dallas is pretty much the perfect team. We have to pick out some kind of struggles for them. The big things here is they got dominated in search 12-5 overall in rounds against Minnesota, and Krim struggled just the tiniest bit as the main AR. So once again, I'm a little concerned with Krim being able to be the main all year. We saw in Black Ops 4, he kind of got dominated against 100 Thieves by Octane and stuff. So that's the one thing, if I can poke a weakness in Dallas, I would say. And then going to the last map, last series here. It is OpTic versus Faze, and this was an interesting one. OpTic probably should have won this. Series 3-1 if Abezy doesn't get that 3-piece. But it was a super fun series to watch. OpTic takes the first hardpoint 250 to 225. Searches, on the other hand, weren't so fun to watch. They got absolutely dominated 6-0 in that Miami search. Then they win the control 3-2. Then they lose that hardpoint by 5 on Moscow because of that Abezy 3-piece on P4. And then they lose that last search on Moscow 6-1. So, respawns in this match were insane to watch. The hardpoints were all close. The control went 3-2. Dash kind of took over that control. Scump struggled in the control. Scump struggled in that map too. I think he dropped a donut too, but not much to worry about there. He'll figure it out. Not worried about him at all. He's been doing it for 10 years. And then the takeaways from this series are obvious. OpTic should have won it 3-1 if Dashy could have just killed Abezy on that P4, or if anybody could have killed Abezy on that P4 when he popped that 3-piece on back bus. But once again, positives takeaway from both teams. If you're OpTic, you probably should have won both hard points. You won one and at least were very, very, very competitive in the other. And like I said, a BZ 3-piece doesn't happen. You win both. And many people are saying Atlanta Faze is the most talented respawn slaying team in the game. And you were pretty much able to outslay them and potentially win both maps. So that's a super positive to take away. You were able to win the control, and they're once again one of the heaviest slaying teams. They should be good at control. But obviously the super negative is you get beat 12-1 in search rounds. And you only beat Paris, who went 0-4 or 0-3 in search and destroy this weekend. So the concern for OpTic, obviously, to take away is will their search get fixed? And in my little hot take section, I'll talk about that a little bit. I kind of have an opinion on that. And then if you're Faze, you can be a little concerned with your respawns. OpTic beat you in the first hardpoint. They beat you in the control, and they should have beaten you in that map 4. You can't just say, hey, we beat them on Moscow. It took a miraculous Abezy 3-piece for you to win that map, so you can't be super satisfied with it. You got to go back to the drawing board a little bit. But the positive, obviously, is you dominated them in search, and I would expect Atlanta to be a top search team all year, so that's not too shocking to see. But that is it for going over the matches. That went kind of long. This is going to be a long episode. I know some of you enjoy the long ones, but I apologize for it being a little longer. But I want to get into power rankings, and like I said kind of throughout this video, there's a little bit of a disclaimer on the power rankings. I will never just be ranking teams based on the standings in power rankings. I'm not going to go LA Thieves 1, this team 2, this team 3, this team 4 based on exactly what the standings say, because to me that's boring and adds nothing to this video. I might as well just show you the standings and say here's the power rankings. So there's going to be some controversy to this list, obviously. Like, for example, I'm not going to put LA Thieves 1 despite them being first in the standings right now. And they may be a little lower than you think they should be, but that's simply because I want to see the teams do it for a few weeks. I'm not going to alter my power rankings too much from what I had like going into the year. Obviously, I had to move some teams around because if you got dominated, like I had Paris up at like 9 or something, and they got dominated, so they've got to drop and stuff. And I believe I had Toronto a little lower, and they were able to take out a team who I thought was a top team pretty handily, so they've got to move up. But like if I have LA Thieves down below a little bit, that's simply because I want to see them do it for multiple weeks. I easily think that between my top 4 teams, I think you could really put any of them one, probably besides OpTic, just because of how bad they looked in search. But like I said, my power rankings could move around. I mean, LA Thieves could take the number 1 spot at the end of this weekend if they dominate again. But before I put them into the top 3, I want to see them look good for multiple weekends, since we saw them look so bad against OpTic. They didn't play a top team. They played Minnesota and they played New York, so that's kind of a little disclaimer. But we're going to go from 12 down to 1, go over it pretty quickly. At 12, I had Paris, kind of obvious. They lost both matches. They looked bad in Search and Destroy and bad in Hardpoint. Overall, one of the least talented teams in the league. Fire looked nervous. They just didn't seem like their teamwork is on point. If they get their teamwork on point, they can move up. 11, I have the London Royal Ravens. Once again, it's kind of weird to put them down at 11 because I really do feel like they're a pretty good team. But there's kind of just a jumble here from 9 to 11. I feel like you could switch any of them around. And 11's Royal Ravens simply because we only saw them play one match. They lost it 3-2. They're kind of a new team with Parasite subbing in. But we did see flashes of BO4 Dylan. We saw flashes of a really good Alex. So I think this team has potential to move up. But once again, they went 0-1. They haven't won a match yet. They only had the benefit of playing one match, but they're a relatively new team. So I'm sticking them down at 11. But they could very easily jump LAG and Seattle Surge. And then at 10, kind of I just hinted at here, I've got LAG. They went 1-1 on the weekend. The reason I put them ahead of Paris is because they beat Paris. And they seem like they'll be a more consistent team than Paris all year. And then I have them ahead of London once again because they were able to win a match. And I feel like they have more consistency and ability to be consistent because Dylan, Alex, those are kind of on and off players. So yeah, I have LAG at 10. And then at 9, we've got Seattle Surge. To me, this is kind of like the end of that like bottom tier. The Surge impressed me. They were dominated by Dallas, which makes me not able to put them any higher than 9, since when they played a top team, they looked like they were just a complete level below them. But I like them above the rest of the other teams because I think with Gunless looking like his old form, him and Octane could be enough to take over and be able to beat London, Paris, and LAG consistently and kind of be like the bottom of the middle of the pack. So I've got them at 9. And then at 8, I've got Subliners. Once again, from here, honestly, 8 actually is kind of in like a tier of its own to me. The Subliners, we only saw them play one match. They were 3-0'd, which is misleading because, like I said, the hardpoint was super close, and then they lost the control by a round and the search in round 11. They're kind of a new team. Obviously, you've got Zuma retiring right before the season, which was caught off guard. Hydra was supposed to be in the lineup, but he has visa issues and can't get to the United States. So you've got Asim and Diamond Khan in, who weren't expected to be on the roster to start. So this team has just gone through hell with the roster. But I've got them at 8 because, to me, if LA Thieves is truly the top team, like so many people are saying, New York could have 3-0'd them. They lost by a combined 11 points in the series. So I put New York at 8, but this is a team that, to me, could plummet down to the bottom or could shoot all the way up to the top 5. And then this is where the controversy kind of comes in. To me, the top 4 teams are clear, but 5 through 7 you could jumble up in any way you want. But at 7, I put Florida. Now, this is going to be controversial, obviously, because Florida could potentially be a top 4 team. But we saw them kind of get dominated 3-1 by Ultra. And Sky struggle. But once again, like I said, this is the week 1 power rankings. If you're a Florida fan, don't jump on my back and criticize me for this. I have Florida at 7 simply because of what we saw from this weekend. We saw them get beat pretty bad by Toronto, who I thought was worse than them. But they got beat pretty bad. They got beaten 2 hard points and a search. So I got to put Toronto ahead of them. And I'm going to put them at 7 right now. But like I said, this 5 through 7 at the end of next week could be completely flipped around on its head. Then at 6, I've got Minnesota. Obviously, they get taken out by LA Thieves, which looked bad at the time, but now who knows? LA Thieves might be the best team. And then the reason that they jump ahead of Florida is because they were able to take out Dallas. And at 5, I've got Toronto. Obviously, we only saw them play one match, and they 3-1'd Mutineers, who we thought was maybe a top 4, top 5 team, still could be. But I've got to put Toronto ahead of those two teams right now because of how insanely dominant they looked. Like, Florida was supposed to be a team that is capable of beating anyone, which, once again, Florida can still beat anyone. But Toronto kind of just punched them in the mouth in those respawns and then never looked back. In that search, got that 2-0 lead and then closed it out 3-1, so I'm putting them 5. And then I'm pretty sure you can all guess the order of the top 4. I've got LA Thieves 4, OpTic Chicago 3, Dallas Empire 2, and Faze 1. This is pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, LA Thieves by the end of this weekend could be at number 1, could jump OpTic and Dallas depending on what we see. But I have them at 4 right now because coming in, they were definitely worse than those 3 teams coming into the event. We saw them go 2-0. They looked very good. So, like I said, I have no problem if you put them at, well, I kind of have a problem if you put them at 1. I think Faze should be ahead of them for sure. But if you put LA Thieves above Dallas and Chicago, I really don't have a problem with that. Simply because, like I said, they went 2-0 and OpTic and Dallas didn't. But I'm not going to overreact. If I see LA Thieves go undefeated again this weekend, and we see Dallas and Chicago either lose or look very weak, I'll have them ahead of them, but I don't. Chicago, I believe I have to put below Empire because they did lose to a better team in Faze, and they could have won it 3-1, but their search looked really weak. If they played a match versus Empire right now, I think Empire would win both searches if it went to a Game 5. So I've put Empire ahead of them, and then Faze, I mean, they dominated LAG like they should. And then they played OpTic, who was probably the best respawn team in the game, extremely close in every respawn, and just manhandled them like it was a pro team versus like a team of amateurs that never play Call of Duty in the search. So they're at 1. And then you guys know, at the end of these, I kind of like to do some kind of like hot takes section, but in this one I'm going to do kind of like a calm some fans down kind of section here. So we're just going to really quickly go through some of the teams and why you shouldn't overreact. OpTic fans, there is literally no reason to panic. If Abezy doesn't pick up that 3-piece on P4 of Moscow, you beat Faze 3-1, you're number 1 in the power rankings, and you're gloating all week about your match. And that would be one hell of an accomplishment to take out Faze 3-1 because they're obviously a title contender. The 12-1 round count against them in Surge isn't something to just brush off because they have Dashy and Envoy. I think they'll figure it out. Dashy and Envoy are great Surge players, and it's not like Scump and Formal are some awful Surge players either. I think they are dominant in respawn with this 2 AR meta because, I mean, it's pretty hard to have 2 better ARs than Dashy and Formal on the same team. So I think they're going to be a top team in this meta all year just because they're going to be so good at respawn, kind of like Black Ops 3 OpTic. They kind of sucked at Search towards the end of the year, but they were just so good in respawn that you knew they were winning the hardpoint and the uplink. They would probably be up 2-1. It was just a matter of could they find a way to win the CTF or the Search. So I think they're going to be dominant in this meta all year long, as long as it stays 2 ARs. And then also I will say, if the smoke issue with like the one-way smokes and stuff is able to be figured out, and then the sniper can come back into Search, I think they'll get much better at Search. I mean, Formal's been a sniper his whole career, but obviously Dashy would take the sniper on this team because Dashy's arguably the best sniper in the league. So if they're able to soon get snipers back into Search and have them not GA, which I hope they are, that will help them so much in Search because Dashy can take over maps with a sniper. We've seen it a million times. Not as much last year because he didn't really play, but in Black Ops 4 we saw Dashy literally take over and win maps because of his sniper. So if that's able to come back, I hope it does because Search is so much more exciting with a sniper in there. Just like watching the first bloods and the picks a sniper can have is just way more exciting. All right, moving on to Empire. No reason to panic here, but you probably know that. Your team's going to be just fine. They just didn't have it in that match against Minnesota, who's a very solid team. They'll be just fine. Minnesota's an extremely good Search team. They took Dallas out in 2 searches and manhandled them, but Dallas is also a good Search team. They'll figure it out. Don't panic. Minnesota fans. This is the first time I'm going to say I would start to get a little bit excited if I was a Minnesota fan. If Minnesota can pick it up a bit in respawns, they're going to be a super good team. They're going to be a top Search team all year. I think they showed that. I will stand by this till the day I die. I'll say it again. Attach is the best 1v1 Search player in the league. Every time this dude gets in a 1v1, I swear, it's probably not, but his win rate's got to be like 90%. I swear he wins every 1v1 he ever gets in. Like I said, probably not 90%. That's like kind of like Maven always says, that's a Maven fact. He just feels like it's true, but it probably isn't. But Attach is like the best 1v1 player in the league. That dude, if he gets in a 1v1, it's like you might as well just give up. He's so good at them. And then if they can just get their hard points to like a solid point where they can win like just over 50% of them, I feel like they could win an event. They're so good at Search. I feel like they should be a good control team. And they have the talent with Priest, Attach, Major Maniac, Slang, and Accuracy's a solid man AR. They have the talent to win some hard points. Moving on to New York. don't panic. Once again, you lost 3 very close maps to LA Thieves, who could potentially be the best team, like I've been saying. Your team is still learning to play together. Same with London. I do think New York is better than London, has more talent, but London is fairly new, so let's give them both some time. So if you're a New York or a London fan, chill out. You only played 1 series, and your team looked good. New York played 3 close maps against potentially the best team, and London, you played a worse team, but your team's new, and you went to a Game 5. So just give them some time. Give them some time to work their team out. And then one kind of note, non-team-wise, I'll add before I end the podcast here, and I mentioned it on Twitter, Hook and Abezy need some damn respect. I was saying all offseason that I think I might take Abezy first pick if I was building a team. If I had to pick any player to start my team, I'd pick Abezy. I mean, he's sliding in before Simp in like every engagement, and he's putting up pretty much close to the same stats. Imagine if Simp was the entry and Abezy followed him up, how good he could be. He gets baited by all his teammates constantly all game and still drops like a 1.3. The kid is just so special. He might be the best player in the league. I think he's honestly the most criminally underrated. People always say he's nasty, but I think even saying he's nasty is underrating his talent. I think he might be the best and most crucial player to his team. Even in Search and Destroy, he's flying up and he's getting in that first engagement, and I swear like probably 60-70% of the time he's picking that first blood and not getting traded. Like, he's just special. And then Hook was no doubt the best player on Empire, who might be the best team this weekend. Illy and Shotzi came into this league, and it's kind of like everybody forgot that Hook was one of the top talents we've ever seen in COD, just because Illy and Shotzi were kind of like the hot new commodity, and obviously deservingly so, because Illy is disgusting and Shotzi was the MVP last year. But it's like everybody forgot that Hook is like also one of the top talents we've ever seen, so people need to put some respect on his name. But I think that's pretty much it for this podcast. I kind of sped it up here at the end a little bit because I didn't want to make you guys sit around and listen for hours at a time. But overall, kind of just to close out this pod, I want to say, like I said, the power rankings could be so off and change so much. Don't try to grill me in the comments or putting someone somewhere. Like I said, I don't want to move teams around too much early on. I don't want to be like, oh my God, Minnesota beat Dallas. They've got to be in the top 3. Or LA Thieves won 2 matches. Oh my God, they're number 1. Like, I want to see the teams either suck for another week or be extremely good for another week to kind of move them around a lot. Because it's so early on, it's nearly impossible to actually pick out an exact idea where everyone is. Because, like, I mean, teams like New York and London, we saw them play 1 match and they lost. So, like, are we just instantly going to put them at the bottom? They don't deserve to be 12 just because they lost 1 match, like, to a good team. And if your team did great, I would say don't get too up on your high horse and too excited. It was just 1 weekend of regular season matches. And if your team did awful, don't get too down unless you're Paris. You might kind of be screwed. But there's plenty of time left to kick things off, although it is important this weekend to get some wins if you didn't, because you don't want to start in the loser's bracket of that first major. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, thanks for 200 subs. That's a pretty crazy milestone to hit, one I didn't expect to hit so soon. But be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more content if you enjoyed, and most importantly, comment. Like I said, comment your thoughts. There's so much for this weekend. As we get more in the year, I'll get more confident in my predictions and more kind of assertive on what I say about the matches. But, I mean, there's just so much to cover with this new format. And I'll probably see you guys tomorrow already for a prediction video. This year is going to be a grind with the podcast because the way the schedule is, I've pretty much got to do a reaction on Monday, and then either on Tuesday or Wednesday, I've instantly got to do the prediction. I'm on top of school and work and everything, so it's going to be a grind this year, but we're going to try to get it done, so I'll probably see you tomorrow for the prediction video. That's going to do it for that one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day, everyone. I'll see you probably tomorrow.